one of the myths of being bold is that it's always big and loud. And I absolutely disagree. It's my thought process. It's the belief in myself. I finally believe in me as much as my friends and family have believed in me.
If you were to ask them, like, what do you want your life to look like in a year? They'll probably answer, I don't even know.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to that woman who's like, I don't even know, like, I don't even recognize myself anymore? Hey, Leigh, thanks for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Girl, I am ready to dive into all things being bold. I mean, I tell you what, like so much of my mission in my life and coaching other women is really to empower them, but to also to help them to recognize their own boldness and to take action to step into their authentic power, and which does require bold action oftentimes. And I think
Yep.
that for so many women, particularly in midlife, I think that this idea of being bold in midlife, well, that just sounds really effing scary. And so I am excited to I'm excited to talk about this. And you've got a book that is being released, and actually this may actually be already out by the time this airs, but this Be Bold Today. So we're going to get into that too. But I want to just kick this off with asking a rapid fire question
Sure.
around boldness, which is, what are the top 3 factors that contribute to making bold decisions?
For me, the number one in order is belief. So belief in
Mm.
yourself. I think number two would be ownership of the steps, meaning no one else can do it for you. And then I think the third one would be resilience, meaning knowing that your things are not always going to work out. You're going to have some things that do, some success, and you're going to have some setbacks. So I think those would be the three.
And I think someone listening to this who maybe is feeling stuck in their life, and maybe, and a lot of my listeners are women who are maybe going through divorce and are
hmm
starting over. Like those 3 things you just said, I think you said it was belief. What was it? The second, it was
Believe in
resilience and
yourself,
belief,
ownership of your
ownership.
steps. Yeah. And then resilience.
For a lot of women who are feeling stuck, those 3 things feel like a pipe dream, right? Like
Mm.
it's like, God, if I had the belief, yeah. Like, so how does one even begin to get to that place of being belief and ownership and resilience?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, what I would hope is that people don't get to a space of just desperation or a space of just feeling hopelessness, right? So for me, when I was at the place really for myself of hopelessness, I was completely burnt out. And I had to make this change that I hadn't planned for. And I'm a planner, and it was very stressful because I was, going to quit my job without having a plan, which is what I did. And I think what was so interesting though was that fear and freedom were cousins on this journey with me. Like
Mm.
they totally were beside me, but every step of the way. So I think there is this myth that it's fearlessness what bold is. So if you feel that that discomfort, or if you feel like it's a pipe dream or not possible, like just dissecting that a little bit. Like, why is it not possible? Why are you not worth you being happy? Why are you not standing in your value of claiming the life that you deserve? And so I think it's kind of, wrestling with that a bit at the beginning. I think for a while I just didn't believe in myself enough to make the move I needed to make, job wise. And I thought, well, I could never like be an entrepreneur. I never even thought about it. That's risky. It's unsafe. It's selfish. I even used that word.
Mm.
So just not thinking of myself first, but it was something health related for me that just like was literally staring me in the face, that I needed to make a change. And it was just a lot of stress for me at that point. And I had to make the bold decision to quit.
Well, and I love, and sometimes I think what forces us into this pathway of boldness is our unexpected, a lot of times what I call midlife interruptions, right? And that
Mhm.
could look like being burnt out at your job and realizing like I can't keep going, in this path. Sometimes for people it's they don't choose it. It's going a relationship rupturing, maybe going through a divorce, maybe it's an empty nest type of a situation. But I love I love just starting with the fact that like you cannot, like the very first thing is like you got to first believe that you can
Yeah.
do it. And for somebody's listening, it's like I don't believe that I can. I love that simple advice of, well, just asking yourself why. Like,
Why don't
why?
you? Yeah.
Why don't you
Yes.
believe that? Like,
Yeah.
what is it? What are the stories that you've created for yourself and that you've allowed yourself to believe that it's not possible for you to be able
Yeah.
to make that move? I think
Yeah.
that
The
that's huge.
narrative can get pretty nasty. That we tell
Yes.
ourselves, right? You know, the way that we talk to ourselves is very unkind at times. At least for
Yeah.
me, it was. And I think we wouldn't say the things we say to ourselves to our friends. So when you're kind of in that loop of like these beliefs that are coming in, there's a really quick way just to kind of write them down, in a belief audit way, make a, right, T, basically put on one side the things that are kind of coming through, the beliefs that are coming through, and write them down. Let's let them come. And then in the other column right beside it, right, is this, a plus for if it's true, truly,
Mm.
and a negative if it's not. And if it's a negative, cross it out and then go to the next. And even just seeing yourself cross out this thing that you wrote that isn't true, like your mind is going to remember, like, that isn't true. Like, go back to that. Remember, we crossed that out. And so I think it's just that simple step, even is something that kind of maybe can get you a little bit unstuck on your next step. I think also being bold sounds so big, and one of the myths of being bold is that's always big and loud. And I absolutely disagree. I talk about this in the book. My boldest moments actually are the quiet ones, the ones no one sees. You're never going to see it on social
Mm.
media. It's my thought process. It's the belief in myself. It's I finally believe in me as much as my friends and family have believed in me.
Mm.
And I think people sometimes get also belief in confidence, and they think they equals the same, and they're
Mm.
not. So I think, understanding who you are and what you're about and your alignment with, importantly, your values. I think those are the big things as you're thinking through your beliefs and writing them down. But a quick belief audit can get kind of maybe get it unstuck and get you started on that path.
So, what is the difference in between belief and confidence?
So belief is like, I believe I can. Like, I believe I can, whether it's figure it out, or I know that if I get a setback that I can come back. And it's more than just I'm confident. Confidence more of a like a feeling, an emotion. It's gonna kind of give you a little bit of gas in the tank with your belief. I think belief and confidence certainly are connected. The more belief in yourself that you have, that you can figure it out. You can come back from a setback. You can meet a new person. You can create. You can be curious. With confidence kind of combined with that, you're going to be able to move forward. But confidence, I think, comes from action and
Mm.
I
Yes.
and claiming agency in your life. And
Yes.
so, but a bold step will, boost the confidence, which will also boost your understanding of the agency you have in your life, the control that you do own. And then it kind of starts this cycle of really, you're going to really start going at a faster quip because your bold steps are actually feeding the confidence and the agency in your life.
Yeah, 1,000%. I do believe, yeah, the confidence comes from getting the reps in,
Hmm.
right? Like it is
Right.
different knowing that you can do it, but you might not still, like you said, you might not embody it just yet. And I love that you're normalizing that though, because I think that a lot of people, yeah, that we do kind of think of them as one of the same, but really it is totally normal to believe that you can do it, but still not embody it yet. And how that really, like you said, just starts to take,
He just
yeah.
yeah, the whole "I think I can, I think I can, I think I can" is real. I know
Yes.
we teach that to our children. We've seen it in, cartoons and books we read to them, but I mean, it's really for the adults too. And I'm not a big fake it till you make it person. I just am not. You need to be real. You need to say what you know, what you don't know. You need to realize also, I think a myth is that being bold is you do it solo.
Yeah.
And you own the step. No one can take that step for you, but you are not on your own in the journey. And, just here to say that no one has it all figured out and no one knows every single step and does it perfectly. And so to realize that you're not alone on that journey of finding who can partner, whether it's your community or, people that you know or your family, whoever it is, you don't have to do things alone too.
Well, you said something earlier I want to go back to about one of the misconceptions around being bold is that it has to be loud. And it's
Yeah.
interesting for me because somebody like me, I think, who has a very outgoing personality, a very like go-getter, like, that is just I like words like bold, they fire me the hell up, right? Like
Mhm.
that,
Yeah.
like I hear that and I'm like, hell yeah, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people though that, like you said, that's not their personality. And the thing, words like bold or power or things like that that actually or empowering or whatever, that can actually turn people away. And so
Sure.
I'm curious, like, what are some of the other maybe misconceptions about being bold?
I think that it's carelessness and that
Mm,
it's not thought filled. And I think being bold is one of the most pragmatic, thoughtful things you can do. And I think that's where it can be found in that quiet space as well. So, for example, when I quit my job, it wasn't like I just went in that day and said, I'm done. I started talking about it probably at least 60 days before, at least. I think I started getting burnt out 4 years before.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
knowing that something was out of alignment. But I think for me, like, we thought about what was option A, what was option B. Could I look for a job? I started looking for jobs. Like I started going through the normal paces that someone does when they realize it's out of alignment. But what I also did, which kind of, just I think added to the burnout was I just kept doing the same thing that worked in the past, which was do more, take more responsibility, give away my time. I was working 17 hours a day easily. So it just didn't work. But we had really thought about what we could do. And we knew that if we had to like pull the cord, emergency eject, like we could figure out a little bit with the savings, a little bit with the retirement. I had a very small runway to kick off my journey as an entrepreneur. And the one thing that powered it the most wasn't my bank account, it was my belief. So I think it is one of the most pragmatic things that you can do. I think it is also in the sense of, going alone, but you don't have to go it alone. But I think it's also important for you to realize that you do have to choose it. It's a choice. And that's one of the things that I've seen in all the definitions on my podcast. It's the first thing I ask everyone their own definition is that it is the thing that they have in common is that it is a choice.
Mm,
But it's your definition. So my definition of bold might be different from yours, might be
mm,
different from the listeners, and it should be. And I think we should not compare our bold journey to anyone else's because no one knows what someone's gone through or what they've survived or what they've overcome. And no one should be judging, oh, you're not bold enough or you're not this. It is your journey, it is personal, and you own it. So I think that's just really, really important for people to realize because I think one of the things that can keep people from making a bold step is the fear of judgment
yeah.
and being judged by someone or being misunderstood, which it happens regularly, honestly, unfortunately, and I think the way that you can be understood is just to be aligned with your values, and that's where I was really out of alignment. My one of my values is my family and relationships, and because of how hard I was working and what I was doing to try to overcome it, like, figure it out, like, not be a failure, like, I had all these things going on in my head, like, "Why can't I fix this? I'm a fixer," you know?
Yeah.
Dang it, like, it's not working, and
Yeah.
so but I was so out of alignment with, spending time with my family. I was reactive, I wasn't positive, I wasn't, someone that, was there for people, and, that makes me sad because I missed really, some
Mm,
really cool moments in my family's life during that time, and now I just wanna soak them up, so it is
mm,
something that is really, really important for people to realize that if they're feeling like something's gotta give or this feels like a lot. These are things I hear from people. Let's like again understand where that's coming from. Don't push it away and really talk through it. And I was 48 when I made
yeah.
the decision. So I don't know whether people think that's old, young, but I went through going through school, get the degree, get the great job, get the title, keep doing the thing. And there is a happiness curve that happens at 47 and 48 where people realize, like, this isn't how I want to be living. And you have
Mm,
enough experience in so far in your life to say what's working and what's not. And you have enough life ahead of you that you're like, I value me, my life, and everything that's connected to it. So I'm going to make a choice. And usually the choice is to start valuing yourself more than you have,
mm.
or to start valuing yourself if you've been giving it away for many, many years when, a lot of us have.
Yeah, and I think for so many too, and I love that you mentioned around 47, 48, like that can definitely pop up. I think you're approaching kind of that, obviously approaching 50. It's like for me, it actually happened sooner because, and I don't know that it would have happened at this point had I not been going through a divorce. I
Mm,
was getting ready to turn 40 and I was going through a divorce. And I think so it sped that internal dialogue up, that internal conversation with
yeah.
myself of like, this isn't working. Like my marriage isn't working. My job isn't really working. I'm so burnt out. I'm so all the things, right?
Hmm.
And so I think though, what prevents women and I think men too, but this is primarily a female listenership. What I think what prevents women from, I think, taking bold action and maybe making that leap or making that change in midlife is that the story they've told themselves is I'm too old. So
Mm.
talk us through a little bit, being 48, it's so inspiring that you left this, obviously this incredible job, but that
It
was
was,
obviously just working you to the bone. You were miserable, and then you start going kind of the normal pathways to get out of, as far as like, looking for other jobs. Like, what was the switch for you that was like, you know what? I'm not too old. I can start my own company because you've built a seven-figure business. I mean,
mhm.
and started at 48.
And
And
year
so,
one.
and year one. Yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, and so talk to us a little bit about it. And because I love sharing stories like this because my story is also similar. I didn't make seven figures in my first year. I made six figures in my first year, but,
It wasn't
but
even my goal.
but
I think
but but
that was,
that's
yeah,
incredible. But
yeah,
I think a lot of women, because I help women start their online coaching businesses.
yeah.
That is what I do in my coaching. And I think I have this conversation with women a lot though, which is, am I capable of making that kind of money at this age? Am I too old to start over? Like, is it too late for me to be an entrepreneur? So let's talk a little bit about that because the answer is
Yeah.
obviously no. It's not
Right.
too
And
late and
that's
you're
one
not
of
too
the myths
old.
of being bold is it's too
Yeah.
late to be bold,
Yeah.
or I'm too old to be bold, or,
Yeah.
I've had such, a long career here. I can't change. Like it does require change, right? Change in some form or fashion. Most likely your thought process and your belief system to start off. And then like, how do I operate? So for me, just being able to make that change, I got to a point of just really, really bad health, right? And so every level of health had deteriorated to a level that I came out of a meeting. It was a very stressful meeting. And my eye had burst from the blood pressure, like in
Holy
the
crap.
meeting. So like I had a burst blood vessel. And so it was literally staring me in the face of like, you've got to change this, kid. That's
Yeah.
not going to work, right? You can't
Yeah.
fix it. And then I said, I think it's time. And then everyone in my family cheered. It was just like, yes, this is not working. You have
Right.
to see it before they can,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
saw it.
Yeah.
But I think, for me, it was so freeing. I don't know if you had that same feeling when it's not like, yay, woohoo, I'm going on this ride, this bold ride when you're making this kind of jarring bold move like I did. Like it was a big swing of bold I was taking, right?
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
wasn't quiet. Everybody saw it. Right. It was big because people were like, what do you mean you're leaving this career? It's such a wonderful place. No one, a lot of people in my field didn't understand me.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm a really private person. At least I used to be before how it's on social media and all this
Yeah.
stuff. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, I didn't share a lot with a lot of people, so they
Yeah.
they wouldn't have known what I was going through. They just thought I was edgy or reactionary or whatever it was, like bitchy, whatever it was that I really wasn't me, but that's what I was because of my burnout. But they didn't know that it was really affecting me on so many levels. So it was such a choice for me. But the one thing that I did, which to a lot of people probably doesn't make a lot of sense, is like I did nothing initially because I had to heal. Like
Mm.
I had to nurture myself. And I don't mean like go to the spa. I mean like sit in the quiet for a bit, like get some vitamin D. My entire corporate career, I was on vitamin D supplements because I never got outside.
Mm.
And so, I mean, silliness like that of just like getting out, figuring out who the heck you are right now.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because I'd gotten to a place where I didn't even feel like me. I
Yes.
didn't even want to look in the mirror because I was so unhealthy. And I just needed to kind of reset. And I knew I couldn't just jump back in to another job. So that's why I think mindset and wellness plus strategy are so important. It's not just one or the other. And I was so focused on strategy and career and all those things that the other things kind of went to the wayside. So for me, when I started off, my goal was to get healthy. I got my own coach, and I think you need different coaches at different points in your life. And I started building what I thought could be the services and the funnel and the things that I needed to create to find joy in my job again. And I think it was just really important that I took that time to kind of, breathe, give a little space, explore, see fall in New England, which I hadn't seen yet because I've been working so much. So, sounds like a simple thing to do, but it was an imperative piece of the puzzle. And what was interesting was it just felt like different parts of my brain actually opened up that had never been allowed or enabled
Mm.
to be creative. And not every idea is a good idea. So I think, that's just really important to realize. And some things that are a full body yes may not be good for the business. So there's a
Mm.
difference between being, it's something that's healthy or something that you want to do. But I think that's really, really important is some of the things that you're going to create along the way. And certainly in my first year, I learned so much. You're never gonna feel like you have it all figured out, and that, we've heard over and over, "Begin before you're ready," because there is no real ready, and I just jumped into it. I had a list of 15 people that knew me, knew what I could do. I started off with a consulting model. The coaching came along with that, but not in year 1, and my goal was just to make what I made, not to make $1,000,000 or anything like that. It was just to make what I made so we could pay the mortgage, go on vacation, do that kinda stuff, buy expensive dog food for our dogs, like, they eat better than we do.
Yeah, yeah, right. I know, right?
So so I think that's really kind of my mindset was, even with this list of 15, I don't need a fancy CRM, I don't need all these things, I just need me. I think the one thing I had to get over initially was sales, because I looked at it as something I didn't do.
Mm.
But then when I realized I actually had been doing that my whole career, when you're talking about your budget, when you're talking about resources you need or hires that you should have, or maybe people who should be let go, you're selling an idea or an innovation
Mhm.
or a need. And I was like, well, I can do that. And so I think for me, that was probably the first thing that I had to get over. And the second thing, which probably was the biggest thing that helped move me forward, was stop plan A, B, C, D, E in it. You have to be all in on plan A, which is you are going to
Mm.
succeed. You are going to get this business off the ground. Because I was interviewing and trying to launch my business at the same time. I think my last interview, the role was 17 interviews, so 17 hours. It's ridiculous. I don't know if any other industry does that, but healthcare does seem to have a lot of layers. So for me, it was like I realized that I was actually pulling energy from my intention and I had to be all in. And that's where the belief again really kicked in. And I had a runway and I just started getting at it.
I think that's so important, and I think, every entrepreneur, if they do start their original business, may or they do start their business as maybe a side hustle, or maybe because that's how I started this company. It was like I was
Hmm.
still in full-time sales, and this was, like,
Yep.
just gonna be a side hustle. But then you do reach that point where you realize that, like, if I'm ever really gonna make this a real go,
Hmm.
then I have to be all in. And that was
Yeah.
and I worked both jobs for, like, almost 2 years, even though I had basically, I mean, almost gotten to the point where I'd replaced my sales job income. It's just
Yeah.
that fear of, like, "Oh my god, if I go all in, then what?" But yeah,
Hmm.
you do get to that point, I think, where I mean, you do have to decide and you realize, like, this is taking away from what could be, and I'm gonna have to go all in. But what I love about this, and even your story and my story, it wasn't like, we started this company and then all of a our companies, and then all of a sudden it was like, you like I like quit my job and I went all in or whatever. Like you still were like you did it in a way that felt aligned for like where you were at the
Hmm.
time. And then you just got to the point and because you believed in yourself that you just said, okay, like I'm ready to go all in on this. But I think sometimes what holds I talk to women all the time that holds them back from like pursuing something like becoming an entrepreneur, using their expertise and experience to build their own company is, yeah, that they feel like that's just too big, too bold of a move, too big of a
Hmm.
move, too scary of a move.
Yeah. Well, they're looking for it to feel right? Riskless. And I think any change, any innovation, anything you're experimenting on or trying out, there's risk inherently in it. But I think you're being thoughtful. So, like, if you want to try something, you don't have to quit your job. Like you said, you could do a side hustle. You could say to a friend, "Hey, I'd love to shoot your wedding. I'm really into photography and it's just something I really enjoy." Or I'd love to take pictures of your dogs, or maybe, do a documentary for you or whatever to help your LinkedIn profile or whatever. Like you could think of some really creative things to do in a what I would consider a safer space, and then kind of see how that goes and how it feels. And you're going to learn in it. You're going to learn like what you're good at, what you don't know, what equipment you don't have, like, where where you may fall down. Like for me, when I first started, it was just me and my daughter. So we co-founded the company together, and, she had just finished college at MIT and BU. And then, the world shut down with 2020. So this was all happening in 2020, the middle of the pit, I guess, the beginning of the pandemic. And so a lot of unknowns and a lot of directions. But I think so started off with a very lean group. But I think what was important was that we just had a focus on what we needed. I also created a really unique for healthcare engagement model. So it wasn't hourly.
Mm.
So my model was a D90. So coming in and working in 90-day strategic sprints with people who really wanted to get stuff done, because I knew I really wanted to move faster than I had been moving, which was probably part of the burnout in me, the entrepreneur that was probably already in there, was
Mm.
just wanting to move faster. So creating an agile consulting model that was engagement based versus hourly based was a huge innovation, I think, that really helped also propel those 7 figures in the first year and on. I think it was just really important for me to use my creativity in a way where it felt like I took some of the risk away, right? And so there are ways to create that, whether it's trying something out or actually creating your model so that it feels more aligned with you being able to plan ahead or be able to project things.
Well, what I love is how you got what you said earlier, how you got to that level of creativity and being able to even think of this innovative new model for your consulting business
Mhm.
was by first getting back to you, by
Mhm.
first just taking care of you. I think I mean, God, there's so much to be said. I mean, even for me on a different scale, I went alcohol free about 6 months, and it's wild to me how much and it wasn't even like I was an everyday drinker, and it wasn't
Mhm.
even like it was just for me. It just wasn't, 45 years old. It wasn't really serving me that much anymore. I was tired of having a headache after 2 glasses of wine. And so I said, forget it. Like, I'm going to see. But it was wild to me when I took that step to really start caring for myself, even just that thing, like even my creativity and what
Mhm.
I see in my business and in starting prioritizing sleep, like just things like that. It's just wild how things can change, even when you take simple steps. I mean, I would define for me, that was a bold move. That was a quiet, bold move that I
Mhm.
did for my life.
100%.
Yeah, that made a massive difference in my
Yeah.
life. Yeah,
Yeah, I actually think it's the quiet moves, the daily habits, the discipline you have to keep that, in front of you as what you want to do for you, which sounds like, oh my gosh, I'm doing something for myself. I'm choosing me. Well, that is what you actually have to do. And I think that's where maybe also discomfort comes from for a lot of women because we're like, so used to doing things for other people. I felt incredibly responsible for my family. And I really was worried that if I quit my job and can't find a replacement for this, like, we're gonna live in our car, like,
right.
I mean, I always have this worst case scenario thing going on. And it's like you invite that in, honestly, if you think about it. And I just really realized that why would I think that? That would mean I didn't try hard. That would mean I didn't really put something together. I didn't plan. I didn't do what I needed to do, which of course I'm going to.
Yeah.
So I think that's again going back to my belief audit that I really needed to do. And honestly, I never felt imposter syndrome in the corporate world ever. I absolutely felt it in the
Oh,
entrepreneurial world.
yes.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Why do you think that is? Why? Because yes, all entrepreneurs, and if they tell you they didn't have this, they're lying.
yeah.
They're lying.
And as you
All, yeah. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and as you succeed, like, you get it back again,
Yes,
like
a thousand
you're like
percent.
you're like, "Why
Yes.
am I in the room with, Jasmine Star? Like, why is this happening?"
Yes.
You're
Yeah.
just like, "Okay, I'm supposed to be here," And I don't look at like I earned it. I look at like I did the work. I have created the space for this beautiful thing to actually have a moment to, like, live and try it out and do the things I needed to do. I think when for me, corporate to entrepreneur, I think corporate was just kind of where I was raised in a way,
Yeah.
like I went to undergrad, went to grad, got the master's degrees, in process of the doctorate, all that jazz. And for me, it just felt like that's was just how I was raised. And so it felt like more of a home base. Being an entrepreneur did not feel like that for me. And I was raised too by my parents, just generationally, like that's a really risky thing to do. And I always thought entrepreneurs were already rich, which is why they could actually do what they do, which was obviously not accurate.
Right. Right.
To all entrepreneurs out there, you know? So, I thought,
Uh,
because I thought, well, they already have money, so they can take a risk, they can do these
mm,
things, and they can
mm,
buy a business or whatever. Like I was just very ignorant, meaning not knowing.
yeah.
And I think it was just, again, that belief, as silly as it might sound to some, but it really is the thing that helped me take the first step. I think it's just important for people to realize they just need to take the next step, not the next 50 steps, which we get in our head about. What do
Yeah.
you do just to get curious about something? Take a class, talk to someone, write it down. Something
Yes.
very powerful about writing it down. And,
Yeah.
I'm into vision boards and those types of things. And so I think however you create that vision for you of what's next or what you want to get curious about or what you want to explore, and sometimes it's actually figuring out what you don't want, right? So I
Mhm.
didn't want to work 17 hours a day. I didn't want to feel as bad as I did. I didn't want to be unhealthy on every level. And, so what do I need to do to kind of, unravel that and get it into place so that I can kind of flip how I was feeling?
So would you say that for somebody, because a lot of women, even the women listening to the show, are really grappling with big life transitions, right? We've talked about some of
Sure.
those divorce,
Everyone's
career
in some
transitions,
type of
right?
transition.
Yes,
Absolutely.
1,000%. So
And you're
would
not
you
alone.
yes, yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Do you think that would you say that kind of for those who are trying to embrace this life transition, but they don't know where to start, they don't know what that next step is, would you say that like maybe just starting with figuring out what you don't want could be the first step? Or is there another first step that you would recommend for trying to figure out like what is the next step here?
Yeah. I think either one,
Yeah.
like you can start with either one. What do I want
Right.
in my life? And like, what do I not want anymore? Right. That I've experienced or are experiencing right now. You can start with either one of those and you're going to start really creating the plan. You're going to start writing it down. I want to sleep at 8 hours a day. Like sleep is key. Right. So, or I want to, if you want to get better, with your walking or your health routine, or you want to have a relationship that feels supportive and someone who cheers you on or understands, or where you're not going 80, and they're going 20. Like, okay, so you want an equal partnership. You want to be able to have someone who challenges you and cheers you. Because I think that's important, and you don't need permission to grow or evolve. No one gives that to you. Like you own that, and so it's just really important, I think, to start somewhere, and you can start with either one of those questions. And just like I was saying, you could see how very quickly you begin to define what you do want then. I was like, okay, where do I find that relationship? When do I want that relationship? Do I want some time to me for a bit?
Yeah.
So I think giving that a little space, I think that, for me it was getting healthy and, emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, all the health needed some work.
Yes. Yes.
You might have the same thing when it comes to relationships of just figuring out kind of where you want to spend your time and energy. And it is important for you to think of yourself before you kind of jump back into whether it's another job or another relationship or, another board or a hobby. Those are the types of things that I think, take energy and space in your life. So just be sure that when you're saying yes to something that you realize what you're saying no to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, what does it look like to, to design a bold year, to really look forward and think about designing your bold year? What does that really look like for somebody? Because for some that can sound very daunting. For somebody like me, I'm like, hell yeah, that sounds awesome. I want to do that.
Yeah.
I'm ready. Like let's do that. What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, I think just starting off like this time next year, because I think you don't have to wait until December 31st. I
Right.
think that's one of the things that's always annoyed me, honestly. It was like everyone has intention for 30 days of the year, and then everything, I think for a lot of people, it goes away by February 1st, and they don't start
True.
thinking about
Yes,
until
that's true.
December. Yeah. So for me, is like, how do you want to feel this time next year? what does it look like? Can you visualize it, like how it feels? And then you visualize what, what you look like. What are you doing? And it was a funny thing the first year, like we did this with ourselves, and I created the framework because I needed something to follow. Like I
Yes.
was one of the things when you leave the corporate world, and a lot of you can probably relate to this, is like you're very like obviously time driven, meeting driven. Someone else owns you in a way of your time, the organization, and not in a bad way, but I mean you're working for them. So I had all this time and I wanted to be efficient and productive and moving forward because I had a runway. So like that's why I created the framework. But visualization was the first thing. And for me, it was just like, I want to be on the beach. It's the sound.
Yes. No, girl. I'm
I
with you.
wanted to be on the beach. I wanted to be smiling, laughing. I wanted to be with my family. And what beach is a very special place for us for many reasons. But one thing is that we would go on vacation to the beach, but I never could chill out fast enough to start enjoying it, early on. So it took me till like we got there Saturday till Wednesday to chill, put my phone in a drawer. And then I had 2 days of vacation. So I said, from now on, I just want to have a quarterly beach trip, not just once a year, but I want to go a couple times a year. And so that was a goal I had. So I was like, "Oh, how do I do that?" Okay, well, obviously I need to create space on my calendar. I need to create a business that's going to be able to move that in. So like just kind of those are just some things that early on visualizations. Obviously, I was building my business too, so I needed to create relationships and start connecting with people. So that just honestly took me having the ability to reach out and ask for help, which I think was one of the hardest things for me because
Mhm.
I'm an independent go-getter, get it done kinda
Yeah.
gal. Like, I don't need
Yeah.
anybody's help. I'm tough
Sure.
Lee,
Yes.
I can get this
Yes.
done.
Yes.
This is why I think, people need to realize that being bold doesn't mean going solo all the time. So even just talking to people, not asking them for anything, but saying, "Here's what I'm doing," just checking in and, telling you kind of what I did. I'm not here anymore. I'm doing my thing. And just having those conversations, again, are steps forward. So creating kind of your bold year on your terms, one, is important is you realize it's what you want to do. You're going to go through the framework, and in the book it actually goes through specific activities for you to kind of start to plan. At the end of the book, you actually have your blueprint in a way of what that year would look like, and it takes into consideration your beliefs, what you're owning that you should, what you should let go of that you don't. Because I had this real big issue in ownership around owning everything that went wrong, owning everything
Mm.
that wasn't going right. I never ever thought about what I had done to succeed or the successes I had had. I'm someone who likes appreciation, but on attention. So a lot of the times I would just, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, let's fix this. And
Yeah.
so it was just really important to realize too, when you're creating your bold plan of what do you own, like, if it's fixing something or, creating something, most likely if someone else is gonna be doing something along with that. If it's getting healthy, obviously you're kind of in the driver's seat for a lot of those pieces or parts, but maybe like if you're thinking about how you eat, like the whole family should be eating in a healthy way, not just you. So it's not like 2 meal preps and those types of things. Like, why doesn't everybody eat green beans tonight? Whatever it may be, like we're going to do this together. So again, creating your bold plan based on the habit or the discipline or the steps you want to take is really important to see, like, who could you partner with either for, doing the thing or actually having some accountability around it. So your bold year, again, I think is really, really important to visualize, to understand what it feels like, and then just to start saying, how could I make that happen? And stop talking yourself out of it. Just stop, because I think it becomes, a barrier that you actually place for yourself, and
Mm.
maybe, like you say, you wanna switch jobs, it doesn't have to be in the next year, but what are the steps you can start taking?
Yes.
And what I have found with every single woman I've worked with, in coaching is once they have the plan on paper, I always tell them, I was like, "Be prepared, you said this is a 2-year plan." It might happen faster than you
Yes.
think, and
Yes.
some of them have, like, done things just in this phenomenal pace and rate that I never could have, and I think it's just because they've actually been ready, right? And they
Yes.
just needed to feel like they had a plan, or they could, create the if this happens, then I do this, if that happens, then I do that, And even if this happens, I can do this. And so I think those are things that really, really help as you plan your bold year. But first, like the first step is just not to limit yourself, probably like you most likely, like me, had been limiting yourself on what the possibilities are, which is that's why I wrote the book. I just wanted people to see the possibility and to scale the message of like, it's just one step you have to take, not 50. And you can start today, but you have to begin.
Yes, I love that. And, God, for someone listening who's feeling stuck, God, maybe your bold move is literally just taking the action to to plan that bold year. That's so
That's
low
it.
risk. That's such low risk.
Write
You're
it
not
down.
like write it down, right? And
Yeah.
I love that is one thing I love about
Yeah.
your book is that you have so many interactive exercises
Mhm.
in your book. It's not just like a hey, just read this and consume it. There's a lot of like ability. There's a lot of
Yeah.
opportunity
Gave
to
us some
like
space. Yeah.
give some space to do that. So yeah, if your one bold move today is just literally making the plan, well, like, yeah, just and if you're procrastinating to make the plan, stop and ask yourself why.
Yeah.
Why are you stopping? Right? What
Yeah.
what 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 does it? It's not hurting anything or changing anything or doing anything to make the plan. Why are you hesitating to make the plan? I think what trips people up though sometimes is, and I see this a lot with women especially who especially are coming out of divorce and even I think a lot of empty nesters too as well. Like they don't even if you were to ask them like what do you want your life to look like in a year, they'll probably answer, I don't even know.
Yeah.
Like I don't and so how do you what bold move would you what advice would you give to that woman who's like I don't because I don't even know like I don't even recognize myself anymore. Like I don't even know what I want my life to look like in a year.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, like, I'm not sure I knew what I wanted to be,
Okay.
so like in that sense of like, what do I want to be doing? How do I want to be doing? I just knew how I wanted to feel.
Yes.
And so I think
Yes.
if you just start at kind of that really human level
Yes.
of I don't wanna feel tired. I don't wanna feel let down. I don't wanna feel overwhelmed. Like, those are all the things I mean, that I could keep
Yes.
going if I
Yes. 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 Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
And, like, let down was not, like, by my husband or by it was more, like, by everyone around me that I was working so hard for, like, like, "Do they love you back?" Like, "No." Like, "Lee, you just gave it all, like, for what?" Like,
Yes.
so, thinking about how you wanna feel can be that first step of, like, knowing that you need to change, and I think there's this level of clarity that comes with understanding that you can't and don't want to feel like this anymore, right?
Yes.
And I think just starting there and, like, if you wanted to feel if you wanted to feel supported, if you wanted to feel more joy, if you wanted to feel rested, like, those are some things I wanna feel. Like, what would I be doing?
Yes.
And when we first started, like, it's I think really important, like, when I first started, I thought everyone wanted to hear all my ideas and my dreams and things that I came up with. I learned very clearly and early that there are dream crushers out there. So, they might not mean to be dream crushers. Most of them don't do it with malintent, but they are out there. So,
Yes.
I think it's also important to choose who you share your vision with
Yes.
and share and share it with the right people. Because I did it the wrong way a couple times, and I think I was like, "Oh, I didn't think about that. Oh," and it was just like little drops of doubt or like, "Oh, wow, that hurt my feelings because you don't even get it." Like, "I'm happy." I remember a woman saying to me, "I'm really surprised I'm happy for you." And I was like,
What?
"I'm really surprised we're friends."
Listen, I think there's like two rules. Like number one, I think yes, be careful who you share when you're thinking about taking a bold move or maybe
Yeah,
something that feels a little out of your comfort zone. Be careful
yeah,
with that. And then also, like I learned early on too when I was having kids, don't share potential baby names with people.
there you go.
Everybody
Right?
has their own opinion. Okay, like you
Right.
don't need it, right? Yeah,
Yeah, you don't need that. You don't
you
need
don't
that
need it.
judgment.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. That's exactly right. Well. I do have just a couple more questions for you, but one of
Sure.
them is that there's a lot of women who I actually have a million questions for you, but I want to be respectful of your time. But there are, I have a lot of women in my audience who are coming out of a divorce, as I've
Mhm.
been saying, that feel really stuck financially. As if
Mm,
you go through a
big
divorce, like
time. Yeah.
finance is one of like the hugest fears, right? And they are afraid. A lot of them want to use their experience
Hmm.
to help others, right? I think anytime you go through a traumatic event or something where you really learn a lot about yourself, it's natural to want to maybe share with other people in the hopes of helping other people. And so a lot of them want to start an online business, but this idea of becoming an entrepreneur and, and maybe even anybody who's thought about becoming an entrepreneur, what advice do you have for them who wants to do something like becoming an entrepreneur,
Hmm.
but they don't feel bold enough. They feel like, oh, I don't know if I'm capable of that, or I don't know if I could hack that. I don't know if I'd be successful at that.
Yeah. Well, I think you start with what you're good at. So like for example, if you've been in a bad relationship, so in the sense of kind of what did you learn? What did you do that you would change? What is it that had moved the needle for you to finally make the change, right? So just those three things. And just
Yes.
even starting something simple like a blog or starting something like a newsletter, which sounds like,
Yes.
oh, well, I can write that down. Then you're like, well, who do I send it to? Well, again, don't start talking yourself out of something before you actually do it. So you could actually just, there's so many ways now to create a website like with AI and things like that. You still got to
Easy.
work on it. Do
Yeah.
not just
Yes.
do an
Yes.
AI one.
Right.
Make it yours. But you can start out small with low dollars as well. I think there was always this sense of like, I had to have everything at the highest level and do everything at the highest level. It's like, just start. That is one way where you can kind of hone in on like, wow, that I saw some feedback to that really were good things that, good feedback for me. It's like, for example, what are the 5 things you realize when a relationship isn't working? What are the 3 indicators of a successful relationship for you? And which ones were blinking red and you kind of
Mhm.
thought you could fix it or things could go back? Like just something like that and write about that. Man, that's something people I would think would want to
Yes.
read about
Yes.
and see.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, that really resonated. Maybe I then, create an hour webinar. Again, free, can do lots of things with that. And, at the end of the webinar, you ask people for their emails, like you have a
Yes.
way for them to sign up, for staying in touch with you. And a lot of it when you start, it's going to be manual. I'll just say that. Like I didn't go into it like with all these bells and whistles and tools and all that. I just started with an Excel spreadsheet.
Yes, it can be
Okay.
as simple as that. And sharing
Yeah.
your story, sharing some of your story or what you're good at and start. Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. It doesn't have to be this big thing. That's one of the beauties of like social media and some of our abilities to connect with others through technology now. So
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And do it real. Like I know there's a lot of pressure to have X amount of followers or to do, X or Y or faster. But I'll tell you what, the one thing I've learned in 4 years is that when you fake that stuff, like, it doesn't get you anywhere except
Right.
maybe some ego metric or maybe some fake thing that people look at, but I know when I think I have 400 and some followers on Instagram right now because
Yeah.
I
And
just
you're a
started.
7-figure business owner. Do you hear
I
that,
just started
people?
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I just
Yes.
started my Instagram this year, and I had
Yes.
LinkedIn before that,
Yeah.
and I had 80 followers on LinkedIn when I started, and I have almost 20,000 now, and I have 18,000 connections. But those are real connections, so there's a
Yes.
one-to-one almost like I'm connected with this person and they're following me. So that's actually what builds a business. And I think it's just important for people to realize like I was successful with 80 followers, 0 Instagram, no podcast, no real headshot because I couldn't afford them. My daughter took our first headshots. So like I'm letting you know, like this is like homegrown kind of
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
And here I am with this idea and telling healthcare, like, no, I'm not going to be charging hourly. I'm going to be charging this 5 or 6 figure dedication of an engagement with you, and here's what we're gonna do, and then we got after it. So, it is that belief doing something different, but it doesn't have to be fancy. It's not a Rolls Royce, it's more of a Camry, as you're
Yes.
starting off, and
Yes.
so I think that's something too that can hold people back when they're just like, "How do I make money?" is you have to start, and I think doing something simple by talking about your experience, being vulnerable right? Because I think as I got into the coaching side of it, I think that was where I was being asked to, we have this great plan, we're doing this great thing, but I would love for you to coach our leaders around the implementation of this plan and
Mm,
see kind of maybe what's getting in the way, because it was really, really important for them for this to be long lasting. And for me
yeah.
too. I didn't just want to be someone that did something for a short period of time and it worked. I wanted it to stick. So I think, that vulnerability of being able to say, yeah, I was there too. Like it really sucked. But here's what I did. And here's what is different now. Like, is every
Yes.
day perfect? No.
Right.
Is every day like a grand slam? No. Do I lose contracts? Yes. Like things happen that you don't expect and that are not pleasant. But I think the lows last a much shorter time and the highs last longer than they did in the corporate world for me. So like we
Yeah.
have those dips, we have those moments, but I think it's really just being vulnerable, which means you're going to have to step out of that comfort zone and share some stuff that might feel uncomfortable, because I had 80 followers because I had everything cranked down. No one was going to see anything. And in corporate world, you're not allowed to do a lot of things,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had to figure out what I was like brand wise and who I was. And I did that work at the beginning along with my values, which was really important. And I did that with my coach.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, as we wrap up, I just want to share with the listeners, if there's one message you want midlife women to remember as they enter into this journey, which so many of us are doing in midlife, of boldness and purpose, like what is that message? What do you really want the listeners to hear today about just being bold?
Choose you. I mean, that's really, as
Oh,
you're talking, that's the thing that came right to my mind is choose yourself.
I love it.
And I don't mean that in any other way other than you deserve happiness, you deserve joy, you should stand in your value, and don't let another day go by not standing in your value.
I love that. Love, love, love that. You guys, the book is Be Bold Today. Unleash your potential, master your mindset, and achieve success. It's going to hit the shelves November 19th. So you guys definitely want to grab that. Leigh, where else can the listeners find you? Obviously, you're over on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Where else should they reach
Come
out?
be
Is
a
there
real
what?
follower on
Yeah.
Instagram. Yeah, so my website's the best place because 'cause you'll see all the things that we do, whether it's the retreats or the networking events that we do, and also the book, more information about the book there and some extras if you do pre-order it, and, really just, Instagram's more fun in the sense of kinda things that I share, in that world, and then the LinkedIn is a LinkedIn, typical in the sense of, some more practical pro tips and those types of things. But I love it because it's a nice balance between business and fun. And that's kind of how I look at me and my career as well.
I love it. Leigh, thank you so much for being here and just the work that you're doing and just sharing it with us and the listeners. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.